Cafe and Networking Podcast promotes entrepreneurs, startups, authors, business experts throughout the world. Available on all major podcast platforms. I'm Tom Riak, an American known as the King of Networking, connecting people and speaking from my studio in Vinhedo, São Paulo, Brazil. Today we talk with Andrena Sawyer, and she's joining us from Washington, D.C. in the USA. Andrena Sawyer is an author, business strategist, and diversity advocate, whose background includes surviving the civil war in Sierra Leone. She inspires audiences to embrace their past, own their present, but more importantly, maximize their future. So Andrena, many business persons that I know, they dwell on the past. How can entrepreneurs navigate discouragement and look to the future?
That is such a great question. Thank you so much, Tom, for having me. How can entrepreneurs navigate discouragement? I think a couple of things we have to understand is how to put the past, the present, and the future in their proper perspective. So I think the past serves to inform us. A lot of people make the mistake of dwelling in the past, and when that happens, we find that it paralyzes us, or we just get nostalgic and we never figure out how to recreate something better than what we've experienced. So to the entrepreneur, one of the things that you have to realize is the future serves to benefit you in two ways. One is it helps you so that you don't repeat the same mistakes. You get to create a future that you want through business and entrepreneurship.
You get to make your own mistakes, right?
Yeah, you do. Or you get to make your own mistakes. But when we only stay on the past, we never get to experience the potential and the possibilities of the future. And so if you are discouraged, one thing is to remind yourself that it's happened and there's nothing you can do to change it.
Right.
But the benefit, again, is that it informs you so that you don't repeat it and you get to own what happens here on out. For me, one of the things that was challenging when I started in business was I was new to the landscape. I did not study business in college. I actually was on track to go to law school and become a civil rights attorney.
Right.
And so it was extremely discouraging trying to do business, working on my business and in the business at the same time. And I could not afford to stay there because if I did, that meant that all the people that were waiting for me in my future, I couldn't help them.
Right.
I would never be able to tap into the potential to see what this vision could be. I could never actualize it. And so by moving forward into the future and reframing my perspective and telling myself discouragement is temporary, it does not have to be permanent. It freed me to be able to explore what could be with my business. It freed me to reach the people that I believe I was put on this earth to reach and to fully tap into this potential that I felt like I had.
Well, that's a major challenge because when you study law, and I see that my daughter, my son-in-law are lawyers, and obviously any lawyer anywhere in the world, you do need to study the past because the laws were made at some other time. But to that point, to change laws to make things better, you're taking a look, as you mentioned, to the present, and you hope things can be better in the future. And when you talk in business, then you're really stepping out of one place and stepping face forward into something else, right?
Absolutely. And, one of my favorite sayings is we don't know where we're going unless we know where we've been. And I think that's kind of a life mantra, but it's also true in business. One of the things that I do is strategic planning. And in strategic planning, you have this framework called the SWOT analysis.
Right.
And, in the SWOT, there's the strengths, the weaknesses, and the opportunities and the threats. And one of the things about the SWOT is you cannot do it well unless you do that SWOT, that opportunities quadrant really well. And the question of opportunities is really all about future exploration.
Right.
It's not about, it's not about where you are now. And so businesses tend to stay in that comfort zone of our strengths, or they're fixated on the weakness quadrant of, what do we need to fix in the now? But the opportunities are equally important to how well your business can do, how positioned you are for success. And future planning is critical to that, to success.
I agree with you because I think part of my success, not a secret, it's well known, we have to analyze tendencies.
Yeah.
And tendencies are out there, but many times we don't see them as.
Absolutely.
And that's where the future is. So you pick up
Absolutely.
something, you do have some feedback today, and then things lead to another. If you're not awake and you don't feel that as being a tendency, then you become part of the past again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it can go both ways, right? Because you can have tendencies and proclivities that are good, right? And what you want to do is you want to leverage those. But if you're not even aware that, hey, I tend to have, an inclination toward these types of tendencies that are beneficial, then you never get to leverage them. You never get to brand yourself based on those good tendencies. And then you have the things that are not so good, the bad tendencies. And if you're not careful, they can hurt you.
They can hurt you.
And a lot of times, even with the SWOT, that's what ends up going into that threats quadrant. It's like the unaddressed tendencies, the unaddressed issues that have been there.
Right.
We just were not aware of them, or we never addressed them.
So SWOT becomes the wake-up call.
Yes. And if you're not intentional and if you're not forward focused, you can miss it.
That's right.
You can really, really miss it. And the SWOT becomes the wake-up call that comes too late.
You missed breakfast. Anyway, Andrena, I want to thank you because for sharing your time and experience. And I do want to make sure that you're back on another one of my podcasts, Talk to Brazil.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about the strategic analysis because that was part of something that I do. The SWOT analysis does require a little more in-depth conversation. We'll be back talking about that, okay?
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I want to remember, and for all of our listeners, you can get more information about Andrena Sawyer. That's Andrena. The last name is Sawayer. You'll find her at her own site, which is andrenasawyer.com. There you'll learn more about her many books and upcoming events. Cafe Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil, and more information on their website, focusmi.com. Thanks for listening. Until the next time here at Cafe and Networking Podcast.